What? What's the matter? Come on, this is pretty interesting, right?
Hey, guys. I think we should just skip to the good part.
Skip to the good part. That's not how you're supposed to tell stories.
There's 100 of you that found this channel by episode 9, and I told you during that episode that 10 would be special. 10 is the bookend of Volume 1 for this project. 9 episodes in, dear viewer, and I want to ask a smaller question, and maybe a harder one. Why do we do this? Why do I stand here every week and tell you about a studio, a balance sheet, or what a particular game means to me? Why do you sit there and let me? There is a sentence going around right now that I want to put on the table before we even begin. It's not that deep. I have heard it under nearly everything that involves a modicum of thought behind it. I think it is the deepest sentence that's in gaming, and I think I can prove it. This is that conversation. In 2009, a man named Shuhei Yoshida sat down to play a new PlayStation 3 game. You may have heard of it. Demon's Souls. He ran Sony's worldwide studios at the time. Part of his job, among many other things, was deciding how many physical copies of a given game got made. A number on a spreadsheet that quietly decides how many people ever get the chance to play something. He played it for 2 hours. He didn't even leave the starting area. He said recently, and on the record, that he thought to himself, why is this game so hard? He gave Demon's Souls the lowest print number he could. He also said, recently, and on the record, that he should have listened properly to Miyazaki. Sit with what that means for a second. The person with the budget, the release schedule, and the green light did not trust the game he was funding. He was not wrong to find it hard. He was wrong about what hard meant. Demon's Souls did not survive because Sony believed in it. It survived because a smaller number of players got past the same starting area Yoshida never left and told other players it was worth it. They talked. Word of mouth built a franchise that a print run had already tried to strangle in its crib. I made an episode about a game with a similar starting area. I called it, Some Games Find You at the Right Time. I didn't know, when I wrote it, that the man who decided how many people would ever get the chance to stand in it had quit standing in it after 2 hours. Here's the thing I want to argue this week, dear viewer. Talking about a game is not a consolation prize for people who simply can't enjoy it. Talking about a game is sometimes the only reason it survives the people who greenlit it. There is a sentence you have probably heard, maybe you have even said, it's not that deep. There is another one, a close cousin. Vote with your wallet. Both sentences are asking you to do the same thing. Shut up and let the numbers speak for you. Let the spreadsheet decide. I have made an entire episode arguing the spreadsheet is not neutral, that a wallet vote gets lost in an election called before you reach the booth. I'm not going to walk that back. What I am adding is this. The wallet is not the only vote you have. The other one is your mouth. And unlike the wallet, it does not require the majority to agree with you before it does something. Yoshida had the wallet. He had the whole wallet. The people who kept Demon's Souls alive did not outspend him. They outtalked him. That is the entire argument of this video. Everything else is the evidence. A friend of mine and I picked up Halo Campaign Evolved the week it launched, the full Unreal Engine 5 remake of Combat Evolved, 25 years later, out on every platform, at once for the first time in the franchise's history. We got to talking about it, the way you do. He told me he thought Halo's community, specifically on Reddit and on X, had gotten genuinely toxic. Bad enough that it colored how we discussed it as we played through the new prologue missions. The one that put an ODST with a lot of spunk in the middle of it all.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. We owe you one. Didn't think we'd ever see any of our own again. I'm Lieutenant Williams, Tiger Company.
From the 92nd Shock Troops Battalion.
One and the same. Honored you've heard of us, Sergeant Major. We certainly know who you are.
The honor's mine, LT. Glad we could help.
Robbins, take the team and give me a perimeter check.
You don't seem as impressed as the rest of your crew.
No, Sergeant Major, I'm not. Takes more than fancy armor and a good PR campaign to impress me. That said, you do have our thanks. It's been rough out here, to say the least. If it's all the same to you, I'd like to fast forward the pleasantries and skip to the part where we get the hell off this ship.
Sounds good. Williams, we'll get you out of this foxhole. But we've still got a stop to make before we're done.
That works for us. The more losses we can hand these bastards, the better.
Chief, let's get to the bridge.
Affirmative. Exit should be this way.
I told him I thought that sentiment was the same everywhere. He disagreed. He said no. Specifically, he thought Halo's community was worse than most. So I asked him if he had heard of Marathon Hate. He had in fact heard of it, and I laid it out, the way I'm going to for you now. It's an entire subreddit built with a singular purpose: to despise Marathon, organized around the specific pleasure of watching it fail. A community with more members dedicated to hating the game than the community dedicated to playing it. He thought about that and told me he still thought Halo's community was worse. I disagreed. We kept going for a while after that, back and forth, neither of us fully landing the other. We didn't stop at Halo and Marathon either. We got on to Destiny 2, a community that plenty of later rivals have called insufferable, blamed outright for the game ending the way it did, as if a comment section killed a live service and not the balance sheet in Tokyo. It was a good conversation, and I want to be clear about that before I tell you what I think the actual disagreement was, because we really weren't arguing about Halo or Marathon or Destiny at all. Here is what I think was happening. If you are happy with the game, you are usually playing it, not writing about it. Satisfaction doesn't need a forum. It has better places to be. Grievance does not have anywhere else to go. So it goes to Reddit. It goes to X. It sets up a camp and stays. That means the loudest room in any given community is almost never a representative sample of the community. It is a sample of the people with something to get off their chest. When my friend and I compared communities, we were not comparing populations. We were comparing exhaust. This is not an argument that the exhaust does not matter. I have spent 9 episodes arguing that grievance, loud and public and sustained, is one of the only levers players actually have. Destiny's community was loud for years before a balance sheet finally agreed with what they had been saying. Content vaulting did not go quiet on their own. It is an argument that volume is not a scoreboard. A subreddit built specifically to hate a game is not proof that the game's real community is worse than a franchise with 25 years of goodwill built into it. It is proof that hating something has become its own sort of hobby, with its own architecture, sometimes built before the thing it hates has even shipped. My friend was not wrong that Halo's discourse had gotten uglier, and I was not wrong that comparing it to a subreddit engineered for hatred was comparing 2 different species of a thing. We were both right about something, and neither of us fully heard the other, which is, now that I think about it, most conversations about games I have ever had. You've heard this before. Star Wars Battlefront 2 shipped with a progression system built on loot boxes. It was deep enough that the fastest route to a playable Darth Vader ran through real money. The backlash was loud, it was fast, and it was specific. EA's own defense of the system became, briefly, the most downvoted comment in the history of the site it was posted on. Within days, EA pulled the microtransactions entirely, before launch. I said in episode 9 that your wallet vote is, in the aggregate, indistinguishable from silence. Battlefront 2 is the exception that keeps me honest. The wallet vote there didn't work because millions of people declined to buy a season pass. It worked because millions of people talked about it, together, loudly, in one place, before most of them had spent $1. The complaint arrived before the purchase did. That is not a wallet vote. That is a mouth vote wearing the wallet's clothes. Now, the newer one that's still running. In February of last year, Call of Duty quietly added a disclaimer to Black Ops 6's Steam page. Our team uses generative AI tools to help develop some in-game assets. It came after months of players pointing at specific art. A zombie Santa loading screen with 6 fingers among the more infamous examples, and asking out loud whether they were looking at something a person made. 9 months later, Black Ops 7 shipped with a set of calling cards in a Studio Ghibli style that looked to a great many players at once, exactly like what it looked like. The backlash was immediate and specific enough that outlets covering it did not hedge. Activision responded, not with silence and definitely not with an apology, but with a sentence built to say nothing while appearing to say something. Like so many around the world, we use a variety of digital tools, including AI tools, to empower and support our teams to create the best gaming experiences possible for our players. Our creative process continues to be led by the talented individuals in our studios. If we read that sentence again, it does not say that calling cards were not AI generated. It says the process is led by talented individuals, which is a different claim entirely, and a company that size does not choose its words by accident. That is a studio that heard the complaint clearly enough to answer it without actually answering it. Here is what I want you to notice about both of these. Nobody organized a boycott of Call of Duty. Nobody ran the numbers and decided not to buy it. Black Ops 7, albeit one of the newer franchise's most mixed receptions, sold the way Call of Duty always sells. What happened instead is that the complaint became part of the permanent record of the game. It is in every retrospective now. It is in this very video. A studio the size of Activision does not fear losing this month's sales. It fears becoming the example other studios point to when they explain why they are being careful. That isn't nothing. That is the entire mechanism this episode is arguing for. The wallet did not do that. The mouth did. A few days ago, I ended up in a long back and forth on a marathon subreddit. I'm not going to name who I was talking to, and really, I don't think it matters. And I think naming him would turn a good conversation into a spectacle, which is the opposite of the point of this chapter. It started small. Someone had posted, more or less, that none of this matters, that as a player, there is nothing to actually do about any of it. I disagreed. I made the claim that as a consumer, it is up to you to make an informed decision, and that there's a way to tell at a glance whether a game is healthy before one buys into it. Player counts, Steam charts, whatever is transparent. Exactly what I said in episode 1. A player replied. He pointed out that people used to buy online games with none of that information, and the world didn't end. He said he'd never looked up Xbox Live charts in 2007, and everything was fine. I pushed back. I said look at 2007 properly. You had games like Halo 3, Portal, BioShock, Mass Effect, Call of Duty 4. Every one of those games is still playable today with zero input from the developer or publisher, because none of them were live service. The landscape had changed since then. Marathon can't find its footing, and the audience it needs already has homes elsewhere. If I check a chart today, it's because I don't want something I paid for taken away because the business behind it stopped being sustainable. Here's where it stopped being a simple disagreement and became something worth reading to you. He wrote back that yes, those games are still playable, but none of them have big Steam chart numbers either, and he asked why I'd brought up single-player games at all. He told me he stopped playing most of his own generational favorites after a couple of years, not because a chart told him to, but because new games came out and took that time instead. He said the landscape changed because we changed it. Players rewarded horse armor, and so microtransactions became a staple. Players rewarded battle passes, and so battle passes became a staple. Players punished low player counts once charts existed to check them against, and so developers now build engagement systems into games that never needed them, or else. Then he said something I have not been able to shake since. He said the community doesn't judge the game anymore. It judges the players for liking it. And I answered honestly. I told him I understood his frustration with bandwagon thinking, but that live service specifically changes the math. In 2007, again, if Halo 3 lost 95% of its players, I still had Halo 3. I could play campaign, split-screen custom games years later, untouched. Those games were never built on the assumption that a healthy population was required to justify their own existence. Live service flips that. I'm not buying a game anymore in those cases. I'm buying access to an ongoing agreement that depends on other people staying interested. A Steam chart, in that context, isn't gatekeeping. It's due diligence. His answer to that was the one I keep coming back to. He said most games expire naturally for him regardless, so an early shutdown rarely feels like a loss. He said he has plenty of non-live service games gathering dust because no one wants to play something without a healthy population, and new content coming even when the game itself hasn't changed at all. He said his real complaint wasn't with people checking charts. It was with the discourse that has made every single release into a referendum. An endless argument that never actually ends. It just moves to whatever launched next, insisting that the game everyone else is playing is the only one that matters, and that liking something outside of it makes you a fool for wasting your time. He said something else near the end that I think closes this chapter better than anything I could have wrote myself. He said the discourse doesn't stay about the game. It becomes about the people playing it. I don't think either of us won that conversation. I don't think either of us was supposed to. He was right that the discourse had curdled into something closer to a permanent referendum than a conversation. I was right that a Steam chart is sometimes the only honest warning label a live service game will ever give you. Both of those things are true, and neither of us said so out loud in the thread, because that is usually not how internet lets an argument end. I'm saying it now. To the good part. That is what the moon wanted. That is what It's Not That Deep wants. That is what Vote With Your Wallet wants, when it's used to end a conversation instead of start one. All three are asking for the same shortcut. Give me the ending, without the argument that it earned. Yoshida wanted the good part too. He wanted the number on the spreadsheet to tell him what 2 hours of frustration couldn't. He was not a villain for that. He was a person with a budget and a deadline, doing what deadlines make people do. He just happened to be wrong. And the only reason any of us know that today is that a small, stubborn, talkative group of players refused to let his number be the last word. That is what this channel has been for 9 episodes. Not a verdict machine, not a hate vessel. When I started this project back in April, I didn't want to be another Legendary Drops or Eon Ye or Luke Stevens, and I want to be precise about what I mean by that, because it is not meant to be an insult. It's simply a different job. Their job is often to hand you the ending fast, sharp, and certain. Mine has been to ask why the ending arrived at all, and whether it was earned. When I started this, I did not just want to tell you to be mad. Anyone can point at a headline and tell you to be angry about it. But there's no nuance to that, no craft. I wanted to give you the history behind it, the story underneath it, what these games actually mean to the people who play them, and the psychology sitting quietly under all of it. The reason a print run gets set too low, the reason a subreddit organizes around hatred before a game has even shipped, the reason two strangers can argue for an hour on a Sunday and still walk away having learned something true that they didn't walk in with. A story needs its shape, build-up, history, a rising action, and a falling one. That is true of Halo 2's demo, and Bungie's 30 years, and a Reddit thread between two strangers who never once agreed and still managed to say something true to each other by the end of it. So here is my answer, dear viewer, to why we talk about games at all. Because the alternative is letting the people with the spreadsheets decide alone. Because a subreddit built to hate something is saying something loudly that it cannot say anywhere else, and only a real conversation can tell the difference between that and simple cruelty. Because a corporation can survive a bad quarter, but has a much harder time surviving becoming the example. Because a game stuck in its own starting area for 2 hours can still be worth the rest of the mountain. And the only way anyone finds that out is if somebody who had already climbed said so, out loud, to somebody who hasn't. It's not that deep. It is exactly that deep. That has been the whole argument every week. I am Agis. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody. 10 episodes in, and we finally made it. No, the channel isn't going anywhere. We'll be right back with another video next week, so long as my upload cadence keeps up. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. It's not a simple thing to put yourself out there, and when you're writing something, you're usually worried about how that's going to appear, how it's going to land to somebody that doesn't know anything about what you're talking about, really. All I can do is keep creating. And I think that's the best advice I can give anybody that also wants to start a channel themselves, is to just keep creating. Because maybe somebody needed to hear about the mountain, why certain games need to find you at the right time. Maybe somebody needs to learn about what a third space actually is. Maybe somebody needs to hear what grief does to a bunch of people at the same time. Volume 2 I have some special plans for. I'll still be covering some news as it comes and all this other good stuff, but I plan on having a part 2 of The Mountain where I discuss Dark Souls 2. I have plans to bring in special guests on the episodes. I have plans to do a full-on review. And I think for once we'll finally look into the lore of a game. Because between you and me, if you've gotten this far in the episode, this was initially also a lore channel. But I could explore stories and writing and talk about certain things I just don't like in writing. If you were here for episode 8, then you already know most of my qualms, actually. There's also a video planned where I talk about in great detail why I dislike Unreal Engine so much. There's still plenty more conversations to have. But until then, all I can tell you is thanks for watching.